Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And we have with us Mr. Saurav Agarwal, who is the co-founder of Angel Bay. And Sir is going to talk about how to fund a startup, funding a startup. And I hope you be attentive to the session and the responses are similarly. Over to you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, the stage is over to you now.
Thank you so much. Welcome everyone. Today I'm going to talk to you more about how to get the funding for the startups. So we would be covering more about, let's say, what are the kind of fundings available, who are the participants, and what are the hygiene factors when you are going for funding. Before that, I'll just give you a brief background about myself just to set up the context. So I'm Saurabh Agrawal. I have got about 25 years work ex mainly into financial research and corporate development. Did my engineering work for about a year, then went for my MBA with IMCAL. Graduated in 2001. Then I worked with CRISIL in the debt capital markets. Post that, I did a couple of years stint with Tata Auto Plastic Systems in Pune, where I was mainly working in the strategy division. My last stint was with Kobal Amba, which is a financial research firm, and we were mainly working with a lot of investment banks slash private equity players. And the company got acquired by Moody's in 2015. And since then, I left my job and I started investing into startups in 2016 onwards. And initially, for about 4 years, I did about 50 startups investment in my name. And post that in 2020, we started Angel Bay, which is a private syndicate of angel investors where we invest in early stage startups. Currently, we do have around 90 startups where we have invested, 96 to be precise. And we are LPs in about 15 funds. So we invest both in startups and funds. Just to give you a glimpse of the portfolio, what we have, not idea is not to showcase the portfolio. Idea is to showcase that we work across sectors. So we have invested in fintechs, networks, supply chain, media, gaming, consumer, shared economy. So we are a sector agnostic investment channel, and hence we do get to see deals in all the walks of life in terms of, let's say, different segments. And whatever we have collated in the next few slides is just our experience over last 8 years. So these are the channels of typical channels of funding which are available. When we talk about funding, generally the first thought goes towards equity. But as you see, there are three other channels of funding which are there apart from equity. So equity is the most common form of funding for startups. So this is normally, let's say there are multiple instruments which are used. Most common are equity shares and preference shares. There are concepts like CCPS and CCDs, which gets converted finally into equity. So you can build a very straightforward instrument like equity shares, or you can do a slightly complicated structure as well, depending upon the need. The main thing about equity is equity results in dilution of stake, and sometimes in case you do a lot of, let's say, fundraise, then you might even lose control to your investors. So equity, that way you don't need to service on a yearly basis, and hence its cash flow doesn't get impacted by equity funding. But obviously, as more and more equity gets diluted, your participation in the company tends to come down. The other method is debt funding, where there is no dilution of the stake because you are borrowing money from the market and repaying the money. This kind of funding generally works for the companies which are cash flow positive. So you can either do a term loan, which is like a loan for 1, 2, or 3 years or beyond, where you are servicing a fixed interest rate. The second thing is this is more relevant for companies which are working on inventory led systems, something like a D2C firms, where you need working capital for running your business, because you might be getting paid by your customers in 45 to 60 days, or in case you are selling on marketplaces like Amazon or Flipkart, you need to build your inventories upfront. So you need a working cap requirement, and that's the point you can do a working capital financing. The new age financing is revenue based financing, a lot more prevalent in D2C space, where you can get funding based on the revenues you're generating on a monthly basis. So the revenue-based financing company will escrow your money, which is coming from your revenue, and give you money against that. Or finally, in case you are a B2B company, you can even resort to invoice discounting, where you have raised invoice to a tier A company like Tata's or Reliance or HLL, for example, where there is a surety of payment, right? So those kind of invoices you can get it discounted by the invoice discounting company, where your customer will pay the invoice in 45 to 60 days, while an invoice discounting company will pay you money against that. Obviously, they will take a small percentage against that. This is normally a 45 to 60 days instrument. But the problem with debt financing is it's difficult to get at early stage. So when you look at term loan or working cap loan, that's like slightly difficult to get. But a revenue based financing or invoice discounting, you might be able to get at early stage as well, till the time your balance sheet is not really too bad. Then you get into hybrid structures, which is like the most common one is venture debt, which is a mix of debt and along with the equity warrants. So the way it works is a company gives you a debt at a slightly lower rate. So it could be 12 to 15% interest rate, which you need to service. And then you give a kind of equity warrants to the venture debt firm, in which case your dilution becomes pretty less, because majority of your money is coming in the form of debt, which you repay over 18 to 36 months. And this is normally available once you have done your institutional round, which means a VC is already on your cap table. Then a venture debt becomes a lot more easier. One of the prominent startup funding method, which is currently gaining traction, is the government grants. So the funding comes without any expectations or of interest or the principal rate payment from the grantee. Now, in this case, you can take money from either the government, which is like a central government or a state government, or there are companies or foundations who might give you grants for doing a startup into a particular space. For example, in case you are an agri-tech startup or you are a women-led startup, there are government schemes or there are foundations who might be willing to give you grants. It's slightly difficult to get a grant because there is a lot of paperwork involved. But once you know where to approach, how to approach, it's like a lot easier in terms of getting that money, because that money you don't really need to repay, and hence like it becomes a good way of funding for the companies which have got long gestation period. So in case you are involved in any R&D, you are developing a product which might take 3 4 years of testing, trials, or let's say hidden trial method. So in those cases it's good in case you go for grants from the government. Moving on, so these are the kind of participants you will find in each of these classes, right? So first of all, once you look at equity, in very early stage when you don't have the product and you don't have a lot of connections, that's the point you can do a small round of raise from your family and friends. Generally, it's in the range of anywhere between 10 lakhs to about a crore. What you raise from your close circle, because these guys know you well, right? So they can take a bet on you. Once you have done a kind of a POC, or you do have a working product, or you do have a paying clients, that's the point Depending upon your industry, you reach to angels. Now, angels are unrelated to you, so they will do a thorough diligence on you before investing money. And hence, like family and friends' money is slightly easier to get. Angels, you will need to prepare decks and present it to them the ideas. And based on that, angels might be willing to invest in you. Once you have a lot of paying clients, right? You do have half a million to $1 million in revenue. That's the point you might want to go for institutional funding, because now the amount of funding which you need is high. So family friends generally is good for about, let's say, 20 lakhs to about a crore. Uh, Angel network or a group of angels you can tap for anywhere between 50 lakhs to about $1 million. But once you need serious money like 2 million, 5 million, or 10 million, that's the point you go to institutions. Out here, once you graduate from angels or angel funds, you go to a VC fund where you do your Series A, and there normally the check sizes would be $2 to $5 million raise for you. PE funds play in a larger segment where they do anywhere between 50 million to about a billion. So there you need to really have about 30, $40 million or $20 million in revenue to reach a PE stage. In between, you do have a couple of other participants. So family offices are the funds created by successful founders. These could be traditional founders or these could be new age founders where the the main business is generating cash, so they want to invest in new age businesses. Sometimes it's because of a strategic reason they want to take stakes into similar businesses. Sometimes they just want to do financial investments as well, just to deploy their money. So there are multiple family offices in India whom you can approach. And finally, there are corporate venture capital arms. So these are the venture capital arms of large corporates. So Tata's have that, Reliance has that. So then a lot of auto companies have their venture capital arms. So these venture capital arms generally look for related businesses where they can get an early stage and they can support these early stage startups with their connects, distribution, and reach. And these startups may be doing something which is relevant for these startups. So in case you are developing a new product, right, you might be relevant for companies like Marico or HLL or Haldirams. They may want to invest early in you. So depending upon which is your area of focus, you may want to reach out to relevant CVCs. Debt funding, the traditional, let's say, participants are banks. But for banks, you need to have a strong balance sheet. Mostly, you should be making profits. Though there are certain schemes under which, even in case you are making losses, you might be able to get bank funding. But bank is generally at a late stage because bank funding could be in the range of 8 to 12%. So that's the cheapest form of debt you might get. But that generally you will get once you become large. Before that, you will find NBFCs into the mix, uh, who will fund you anywhere between 14% to 20%, and they do a lot of unsecured lending, but still they would need good credentials of your company. And at the early stage it's difficult to get NBFCs to invest in you, right? So they are expensive than banks, but they do come earlier than bank. For the early stage founders who have just started or about a year old, revenue based financing and invoice discounting are the two methods in which you can take debt. Sometimes your equity investors would also want to put in debt into you. So that is the third form of unsecured lending, which the early stage companies can get to. On the hybrid side, these are since a bit complicated structures, and hence venture debt funds. These are specialized funds which do only venture debt. So you do have Stride and one kind of funds who do venture debt. Then there are certain family offices who want to do a mix of debt and equity. So there you will get hybrids. Then finally, once we look at the grant side, grants are normally given by the government. So these are central and state government bodies. So there are a lot of schemes. You can go to websites and check. Then there are industry bodies who are trying to promote a specific kind of industry. And sometimes these industry bodies might have grants for you. And finally, foundations. So there are certain NGOs slash foundations who are promoting entrepreneurship. So you might be able to receive some kind of grants. And sometimes these grants may be in the form of soft loans that you don't really need to pay back money for the first 3 years, and post that there would be a nominal interest rate of 6 to 8%. For again, these are for very specific use cases where either you are into manufacturing or you are into a very special class where you might be able to get grants. Moving on, this is like how you can access each of these participants, right? Each of these kind of instruments for your funding. So, firstly, in case you want to raise equity, one way is in case you are raising early stage equity or even an institution, you can try to connect with the relevant person through social media, something like a LinkedIn place. Now, obviously, since it's a cold reach out, it may take you a bit of time, and out of 10 persons, maybe one or two may respond. The second channel is you might go through angel networks or incubators or accelerators. There you apply, and based on the strength of your uh, project, you might get investments through these networks. So, networks will syndicate money from multiple angels and invest in you. And incubators and accelerators would be early stage guys who would support you with your growth as well as will try to arrange funding. In case you are looking for early stage funding, you may also want to reach out to startup events. Now, in these events, you might be presenting or not presenting, but there would be investors who would be present in these events, and you can reach out to them, walk up to them, or drop a note to them post the event. Finally, in case you are raising serious money, you might want to use an investment bank, or at early stage, you might want to use a startup advisors who would have connections with multiple such participants. Before that, I think one of the places where you might also get access to equity investors is through your network. So the college you went to, or within your relative circle, or within your LinkedIn circle, you might be able to figure out few persons who are investors, either at the angel level or at the institution level. A warm kind of introduction or warm reach always gives you better result compared to a cold outreach in this segment, because this is a lot of it is trust based. Now, once you are trying to raise money through debt, you can again go direct approach, which means you can directly write to these institutions by going to their websites and dropping a note, because most of the websites of banks, NBFCs slash RBF firms, they do have contact us kind of information where you can directly approach. And even on the debt funding side of banks and NBFCs, they mostly mention clearly on their website about how to approach them. Now, in case that becomes onerous to you in terms of reaching out to so many banks, NBFCs, slash, let's say, private participants, you might want to reach out to debt advisors. So there are special class of advisors called debt advisors who try to arrange only debt for you, right? And thirdly, in case you have already raised equity, then you can actually check out with your equity investors on your cap table. They might be knowing some of these debt participants where they can give you warm introduction. And again, in case you get warm introduction in each of these places, chances of you landing up with funding are a lot higher. In terms of hybrid instruments where you are reaching out to either family office or a venture debt fund, it's roughly the same. You need to either directly approach them through their website, search on Google, figure out the names, and drop a note, or you can go through debt advisors, or finally, equity investors in the cap table. Grants mainly, like most easier way is to go directly through the websites, because then you would be able to figure out what are the requirements for those particular grants and whether you are eligible or not. Now, in case you feel that's too much work, you can again approach advisors who go for giving you grants, right? So these are the advisors, sorry, not giving you grants, for arranging grants for you through all these channels. It's difficult sometimes for advisors to give you or arrange grants for you, because again, not every application will be given grants. But in case you go through advisors who've gotten it done for multiple other companies, then you are getting a good advice, and chances of you landing up with grants go slightly higher. This is something I picked up from net. This is the sources from traction database and Bain analysis. So this is the graphics available on net per se. Out here, this is, I think, couple of years old study, but this gives you a very relevant figure in terms of how the funding progresses. At that point of time, I think there were about 1.12 lakhs registered startups in India. Currently, I think the number would be close to 1.4, 1.5 lakhs. So, in their analysis, what they did for these 1.12 lakhs companies, what they realized was that about 9% of these companies got funded at a total, and 91% companies weren't funded, right? So, once you look at this, it's not so easy to approach investors and raise funds, right? Out here, once you look at, out of these 10,200 companies which finally got funded, about 29% of the companies were able to raise seed round, which means about 3,000 odd companies were able to raise the next round of funding. And Series A funding, like out of those, only 41% companies were able to raise Series A or beyond. So once you become slightly older into the system, your chances of raising future rounds are high. One, because you have grown in the system. Secondly, you do have a battery of advisors and seasoned investors who are helping you grow. But at an early stage, chances of you landing up with money is low, because your business model is not so sorted. Plus, you don't really have the luxury of so many advisors or good guys getting attached to you at an early stage. This is like the key elements of a good pitch deck, which should be there. Now, pitch deck is just a representation of your business plan. So when I talk about that, these should be the elements in your pitch book. The thing is that this is something how your business plan should have been made at the early stage, right? So once you are sending someone a pitch deck, one thing is you need to write a good cover mail. The cover mail should be highlighting the strong points of the company, which could be either in the area of problem solutions, in case the management of the company is good, in case you have achieved something in terms of traction, awards, or something. So, this is just a short and crisp mail, which kind of forces the reader to open up your pitch deck. In case your mail is not good, chances are that your pitch deck may not even be read, because reading a pitch deck is like a lot of work. But in case the accompanying mail gives you a sense or a flavor about the company, it becomes a lot easier for the investor to go through the decks. Now, one thing you need to understand is that investors like us who are still small, we do get about 200 decks a month, right? So it's not possible to spend time on each and every deck in depth. And hence, the idea is there are certain gates which we use for going through the decks, right? So one of them is a cover mail format, that in case cover mail is good, chances are that your deck would be getting open. Once we open up the deck, what we need in these pitch decks is one, the problem statement. So first of all, tell us what's the kind of problem you're trying to solve. And this is the place where you need to really think through while building up your business plan as well. That is this the problem worth even solving for? Right? So one, in case the problem is worth, then you need to be able to articulate the problem so that the investor understands that this is like a kind of problem you are trying to solve. Now you don't really need to use very heavy sounding words out there, right? So there are few decks which I receive where I get completely lost in the language. What you're trying to convey to me is your business plan, not impress me with your English writing skills, right? So just be sure that you write the problem or your complete deck in a simple, easy to understand language versus putting in heavy words out there. So this is one, and once you have written down the problem, write down the solution, what you are bringing to the table. This is your business, right? Now, one of the problems which we face in the decks is generally that there are four problem statements, but your business is solving only two of them. Now, in case you're not solving any problem, don't put it on the deck because there needs to be a one-to-one correlation in terms of these are four problems I'm solving, or these are the four problems, and my solution will solve all four of them. In case you do have solution for only one or three or two, just write those problems, right? And get on with it. And again, it needs to be clear what you are selling, right? Sometimes again, because we are using very probably high sounding words, or sometimes we are so clear in our mind that we don't put our solution on the slides. The idea is it's the deck is not for you, it's for the investor to understand your business, and hence like the solution needs to be cleanly articulated what you are selling. Once you have told about the solution, then you do the market analysis in terms of looking at the trends, whether the that particular industry is a growing industry, what are the tailwinds, what are the headwinds, which may impact the business, and then do a market sizing to show that the opportunity in which you are getting into is large enough for the investors to be able to make money. Right now, in case your business, the total market size is hardly 50 100 crores, it may not be viable business for the investors to invest, right? And hence, like that becomes a key matrix. But again, don't just pick up any random industry for doing a market sizing. In case you are selling drugs, for example, pharma drugs, right? Don't give me the sizing of the complete pharma market. Just give me the market size of the drug what you are working on. In case it's a BP drug, in case it's a obesity drug, just give the relevant facts and figures versus trying to give me the complete market size. Post that, you need to do a competitive analysis. Now competitive analysis is for you as well as for the investor. In terms of, once you look at the competition, look at the kind of competition and the kind of things they are doing, right? It's not about you giving me a matrix where on 15 parameters you are saying that you are better than everyone in the market, but then all those 15 parameters aren't even relevant for the business, right? So see which are the relevant segments or relevant factors for the competition, and do an analysis of your business against them. And then, in case you do have a moat or right to win, elaborate on that. In case it's only the execution play you are playing on, then just talk about execution capabilities, right? Not every business or not every startup needs to have a moat per se, right? There is enough space for multiple players to play in a single industry. So then you talk about what are the strengths of your business compared to the competition. One of the section where we find a lot of founders not putting enough thought is the giving us the current stage, like what all have you achieved since the time you have started the business. It's good to show the roadmap, the vision, and all that. But in case you're 2 3 years old startup, or even 1 year old startup, at least tell us what you have done for last 1 or 2 years, So that gives a sense about or gives a credibility to your pitch, which shows that what you have done till date. And then you showcase about what's your go-to-market strategy in terms of how would you sell your products and services. So talk about the target segment in which you are going, the channels you will be using, and do analysis of whether those channels or segments are even relevant for you. This is again very relevant for your even business planning stage, because unless you know which channels you're using or which channels you will want to go to, your plan would not be perfect in terms of the funding requirements and things like that. Right? So be clear about what kind of markets you want to go to and what are the channels you use. You need to do test marketing in most of these channels. If you say I'll use Google for example, now, Google, what's the kind of ROAS you are getting, right? What's the competition is selling out there? So you need to get a sense about how would you sell your product. Then in a good deck, you generally find financial information, which is your historical financials, talking about what you have achieved today and what you will be achieving once you will be getting this funding. So next 3 years projections are generally the norm. Your revenue and key metrics like EBITDA, in case it's like a customer-centric business or let's say a B2C business, the kind of clientele you would have, the number of users you would have, number of actors you would have. So just put in the financial metrics of today as well as what you're talking about future. Then you need to elaborate a lot on the management and the advisors you have. One of the key things again is what we find is a lot of decks we receive. We just find the photograph of the founders as well as their names, right? Now that doesn't give us anything. In case you do have certain skill sets or certain companies you've worked with, which is relevant for your current startup, highlight that because I worked for XYZ company which is into fintech, and hence like my fintech, I do have a lot of experience in running a fintech. In case it's a fintech kind of a company you are trying to promote. In case it's a D2C company and you've worked in any of the retail companies, showcase that so that your relevant experience comes into forefront versus investor trying to figure out if you have got relevant skill sets to run that particular company. The next slide, which is important, is what is the requirement of funding and where you would be using the fund. Now, this is again one place where we normally find a pie chart containing 20% for ops, 20% for staffing, 30% for R&D. In case you can give a bit of more sense around where the funding would be used, slightly more granular, that just helps us in understanding whether the funds are being reasonably asked or not. And finally, in case you do have any patents, do mention on the deck. In case you won any legit awards, then put it out there on the slides as well, so that a kind of credibility sets in. But don't put in awards which you have bought from somewhere or something which is very small, right? So, in case you are reaching for significant funding, just see that your patents slash awards are relevant for that kind of funding amount. So this is a nutshell how we look at a pitch deck, and accordingly, let's say the business plans are created. So this was my last slide. Open to any kind of queries now. Hey Nirupma.
Hello, sir. That was
Yeah.
quite an amazing session. Okay, we are now open to questions. Let's just wait for another 5 minutes if anybody has any questions. Then we'll
Sure.
end the stream. Sir, we do have a question right there by Ravi Singh.
Okay, okay. The query is, can you share any tips for negotiating with potential investors? Uh, Out there, mainly once you're negotiating with the potential investors, the thing is you need to come with a position of strength, which means you need to elaborate upon the strong points in your business. When you're pitching to the investors, right, you are kind of selling the shares of your company to them, and you need to showcase how the company is valuable, and or in the future how can the company become more valuable, right? So that is one way of negotiating. Secondly, you need to have market data. So in case you're a D2C brand or a fintech, right, look at the valuation of your competitors in the market or other companies into the similar space, right? Do that analysis and present those facts to the investors to just strengthen your case in terms of why you should be getting a higher valuation in the market. In case you don't go to the investor with a legit ask in terms of something which is backed by numbers or which is backed by the industry data, it sometimes becomes difficult to negotiate.
Sir, we do have another question. Can you please answer?
The query is, what criteria do investors typically look for in a startup before investing? So, different investors may have different ways of evaluating the startups. For us, the main thing becomes the founding team. So, what's your credentials? What you've done in the past? In case you're fresh out of college, like how well did you do in your college? Plus, in case you've worked before or if you've done startups before, those kind of things become pretty much relevant for looking at the founder's credentials. Secondly, we look at the industry in which you are starting your startup. So, whether the industry is a growing industry, whether it's stagnating or going down. Thirdly, we look at your idea itself in terms of your business plan within that industry and how well we like that particular product into the industry. So these are typically the top three criteria we generally look at before investing. How can I improve my startup's chances of securing funding? So, there are again multiple things which you can do. One thing is that hash out your business plan to a larger details. It's not about that I am an early stage founder and hence like I don't know a lot of things. What you're competing against is other startups in the space for funding. And it's not your space, it's like even in case you're a D2C brand, you're still competing against a fintech for funding because investors' money is limited and most of the investors tend to be agnostic in nature unless there are specialized funds or investors who are looking for a specific category. Right? So out there, you need to really showcase that you understand your business. Bring out the strong points about your business or your plan in terms of your startup plan to the investors so that they get excited. Thirdly, work on your GTM strategy. So you need to showcase that whatever you have written on paper, right? If you have got a proof of that you have done a small pilot or you have been selling to specific clients, then you go and present that so that investors tend to get a bit more comfort in your startup per se. Finally, look for the investors who are investing in your kind of business. So in case you go to any and every investor, chances are you will hear a lot of no's. But in case you know someone is investing or someone knows about your segment, it's a lot easier to get funding from them because you are presenting to the guys who are looking to invest in your area of startups. So just target those investors as well. So these three, 4 points might be able to help you get, let's say, a better chance of securing funding.
I think we are done with the questions, sir.
Sure.
Uh, so thank you, sir. Thank you so much for doing this. It was an amazing session. I'll just end the stream right now.